a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary. I am a revolutionary.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
Where there's people, there is power. Justice in our time. Good evening, everyone. It's Sean Buchanan with another episode of Equal Start. With my right-hand man and Administrator Kingsley. We're going to be discussing UK-US politics today, as well as a bit on feminism within primary schools in the UK. As you know, as we was talking about before we start recording, King, that Trump, with a victory, it led to a crypto bounce. And obviously the bounce has, improved my portfolio no end. That's what I told you to get in. And obviously this business about Elon Musk is going to donate 80 million to Nigel Farage off the back of that to help conservatives get back to power in the West. Well, obviously the UK. So Republicans in power in America, and the Tory version, the Republicans over here already trying to push out Labour with that petition. Do you see it? The petition was it 2.8 million signatures?
2.8 million
to remove the Labour government already, and they're saying the polls show that Labour's already behind after only 4 months in power, behind Tories and Reform. So, what do you think about all that?
It's a very hit and miss situation. I think there are pros and cons to the whole what's unraveling before our eyes. The obvious pros on one hand are, and arguably they are, the fact that America is going to see a change, what many can consider a much needed change, and a lot of people are not in agreement with that. But it's not as though it's not they have the option to leave. It's it's a free society. So if they feel so strongly that Trump being the new US president is a prohibiting factor, then they could always move to Australia. You know what I mean? They could always move to here, which I don't think is necessarily a better choice. So really, I think that it's very easy to say that the grass is green on the other side, especially when the leader is not exactly what you want them to be, because they've got a lot of skeletons in their closets and whatever. But the reality is the grass is green on the other side if you haven't tilled your land properly. And I think it's a reality check that many will come round to. It also doesn't go without saying that it's a chance for the people to speak as opposed to the celebrities. Now, to highlight the cons, one of them I think is related to Elon Musk's involvement in US and international politics, and the cons are not what some people see the cons as it pertains to Elon Musk. I think the real con with Elon Musk's involvement is that he's a divisive figure. He's a man whose motives we cannot be fully certain of, knowing that this is a person who's launching a whole line of Tesla robots, that will literally replace, that will literally take jobs from people who just want to get an earnest day's work in and earn their keep. And at the same time, this is the same person that is calling for freedom of speech in the UK.
Yeah, of course.
So if
Divisive.
that's not divisive, then I don't know what
Yeah,
is.
yeah. He's triangulating. Obviously, over here, the Tories provide a better environment for big business corporations to have labor force and have workers' rights reduced so they can get more for less. So they call that greater productivity. So that's
Mhm.
why that's gone on there. In terms of the finances of the nation, remember his whole thing is when robots take over, everyone will get a basic universal income.
And this is
Because I know
where,
a lot of the menial tasks will be automated. A lot of like maybe even construction and engineering will be automated. And I think it will
Mhm.
become more of an economy for creators and people that can code. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so that would be the thing. So obviously a lot of people like if they don't retrain or they're too stuck in their ways to retrain, they'll be left out in the cold
mhm.
in the labor market. So they're in the West they'd have to have a basic universal income, otherwise there could be civil unrest, as you know, protests and riots, maybe even coups and overthrowing of government. So
Yeah,
that's why they
yeah,
keep you up on the easy income to have us in a happy depression. So that's
basically.
understandable. That's what happens when you've got that kind of character and you've got the influence of finances to make these kind of things happen. But automation is inevitable, to be fair. I just hope it doesn't turn
Mm.
into a Terminator thing or the Matrix.
Imagine just to think that a robot could be like, could have some form of sentience. And the moment, even if it's by malfunction or programming, the
Mm,
thing could just wrestle you onto the floor, subjugate you. The moment you're about to scream, it
mm,
just suffocates you.
mm,
It can literally just yank your neck drunk.
mm,
I think it's a scary precedent of, because it is happening right before our very eyes. The likelihood of films even made purely by AI within the next 5 years is becoming increasingly possible, especially with the issue of people having their voices copied or digitized without any their consent. It makes the future, in many ways, it makes the future look bleak, you know. But in order to not look far ahead, the next 3 to 4 years of Trump literally will really show whether the votes was worth it.
mm. Just
He
remember, there's
there's
world leaders can't really do much in 4 years. By the time their policies get passed or their legislation gets passed and they start executing, they'll maybe get 18 months of their policies actually going through.
hmm
If it's not pulled up
hmm
and ripped up like by the next president. So it's hard to see. I think every president probably needs or national leader need at least 10 to 15 years to see the full benefits of all the detriment of their policies. Because look,
mm,
Trump already after 8 years, Trump started to dismantle the Obamacare, you see what I mean? And then obviously he brought in the high tariffs on trade with China, yeah, and competing economies. So that
hmm
the economists over there reckons that's what's triggered the mass inflation as well as the Ukraine conflict. So it's hard to say the thing, but it's more happy bounce and the rhetoric that people seem to follow, and because it
yeah.
fits in what they think and suits their biases, they're prepared to put up even if they're whipping their back openly. Say, "Oh, look, I'm on your side," but they're whipping their back at the same time. And said, "Oh, thank you for whipping my back because you're the kind of person I have a drink with. You say the kind of things that I like. Why are they whipping your back?"
Yeah,
It's
it's
like with
madness.
Dwayne, when I told him, listen, you're there saying, oh yeah, you're saluting Kemi Badenoch, yeah, and that you don't deal with labor people because they're people that are waste people that don't want to work and all this. So you're and how labor would steal wealth and all this. I said Tory government until recently has taxed more than all the previous Labour governments in peacetime. Yeah, so
Mm,
so how can you say that? I said they never ever reversed VAT from 20% back to 17.5%. Don't you see that they're con? I said they've even renationalized aspects of the railway service. So I said, what are you talking about? I said they've raised the tax burden on people in the name of, oh, they're trying to balance the books. I said, and after 14 years, they still didn't balance the books. So what do you expect? I said this is all a charade. They're basically the
it
same.
is.
They're playing the same playbook.
They are.
It's just like
Absolutely.
neoliberalism. Neoliberalism. That's what it is.
Mm,
There's no real difference
mm.
between them. Mm. Same with America,
Yeah,
Democrats and the Republicans.
abs
Mm.
absolutely. I remember when I this conversation came up back 6 months ago, and George Galloway was on GB News describing the two-tier party system as a pair of butt cheeks.
Mm. I agree with him.
You
That's the
know,
same. Mm.
yeah, it's a very strong analogy that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell. And with we can see further change on the rise, not just with the thing that you mentioned, in which Elon Musk has offered to donate a generous sum of money to the Reform Party,
Yeah,
but we're
he's
also
retracted on that now. He said he's not going to give them. I just seen online on
okay,
Yahoo News. They said
okay,
he's not going to be providing reform with 75, 79 million, 80 million of donations, and they're talking about
mm,
tightening up the rules of foreign entities donating to national parties to prevent unnecessary influence. Which they always find another way to influence the thing when they
absolutely.
have some money and power. Mm,
It's a broken system.
mm,
To cut the long story short, we see a lot of defections. Labor members, don't know how many there are defecting to independence. Um, Tories defecting to independence or Lib Dems, and
mm,
then you see also Tories defecting to Reform,
true.
to the Reform Party. And that really tells us that there's a massive unsettling, and there is a potential of an uprising on our shores. How soon, one can't really tell.
Uprisings that would be no good. That'd be no good. But the way we're so disjointed and divided as the main normal public citizens and working class, middle class, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
There's not much stomach there for hardship and actually taking on
There
government.
isn't.
So I don't see that going anywhere over here anyway. Mm. I don't see it.
No,
Or in
I
America
don't
either.
see that.
They'll come out with the National Guard, the police. That people get frightened. The leaders would be rounded up and dealt with, and then they'd be back to normal. I think that's the way. That's the way it is over here. We're not France, and we're
We
not.
aren't
We're
France.
not Syria. We're not Afghanistan. You see, so I don't. If there is thing, it'd be more like the London riots of 2011, and then it'd be
Hmm.
the main culprits and the ringleaders. They lock them up, make an example of them, and then they'd be back to the status quo. It's like the culture over here and the mindset. So, oh, do as you're told, follow corporations. Oh, don't make too much of a fuss, and you'll get along in life if you work hard enough for long enough. There's so much of that in everyday people over here. I don't see that really happening. I don't really see.
Yeah.
It's the
It's
same.
no coincidence that many people are fleeing the UK because the economy, even the GDP, and how that has an effect on people's ability to really make a better living than they are now. it's not going to climb for a while. The climb is slow as it is, and even though it is some form of progress, that is about to be brought to a halt.
Mm. Mm.
And on top of that, there are people literally just fleeing to places like Spain, Dubai. Some maybe go to
No, no,
Australia.
Dubai is on the rise, and Spain. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look at the figures, but because the National Audit Office and Census, they take a view of that, of those kind of things. That's
Yes.
yeah. So I'd have to look first, but from what I've seen so far, a lot of people are grumbling, but they're not making them kind of mass migrations yet. Mm. But I
Well,
do
they
think
are. I
think
think.
the
Mhm,
employers' national insurance rise will prevent maybe businesses from hiring staff, especially in the service sector with hospitality, retail,
mhm.
and basic office admin. I think that will reduce people, and people have to do more for less. So I don't know where Labour's going with it. I don't see how they think that is even sustainable because they're talking about, oh, they have to fix the economy, and then once it's back on its feet, they will implement more growth strategies and arm people with better skills. We'll have more young people working and less foreigners over there. But that is just rhetoric. I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening because that kind of reset will lead to a massive, massive drop in productivity and a depression. So that you know what they're going to do? They're going to fiddle and with the money, maybe spread some around at the fringes, flagship stuff
Mm.
to make people feel good, but fundamentally nothing will change. So they'll be just creaming that money for God knows what. So
Yeah,
way it seems
there
to
is a
be.
lot
That's
of.
the way it's been. The way that's to be fair. That's been the way since the Blair Brown government. It's been constant
Yes,
thing from when we were in our
constant
twenties.
bullshit.
From 2007. It's just basically been all the decline, 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 decline. Despite them saying, "Oh, we've had growth and thing," we haven't had above 3% growth for nearly 2 decades. So I don't see how
Mighty.
aging working population, low productivity. People don't want to invest in infrastructure, construction, house building. They don't want to really invest the kind of money needed to speed up the industries and sectors of tomorrow. No one wants to do that. So outside of blockchain. So, and then, a lot of the normal people, they're not into that. That's not what they're going to train for or invest in. So it's all based on institutions. And the institutions say, well, if you don't give us tax breaks and thing, we'll just delay it. We'll stall and drag our feet and eke out a living. So as long as we're making our profits, the rest of you can suffer. Yeah, so that's the whole idea of it. It's a charade,
Mm.
really. It's a charade.
This is a charade.
We'll see because if they don't get it right and at least halfway through the parliament and then we don't see some reasonable growth and better public services, they will say basically you flop Labour, so it's time for you to go and we bring back the Tories. Especially with I don't know, again,
Oh, bloody.
politicians saying they're gonna do this and that, your life's gonna be better and it's more of the same. And higher tax, higher cost of living, no house building. You see what I mean? Higher bills, less high skilled jobs, yeah. Unless you're in the special handshake crew, and that's what's gonna
Mm-hmm.
happen. But
Pretty much.
saying that this thing as we were talking about earlier, and with this feminism amongst the school teaching profession, especially in
Mm.
primary schools, yeah, and it's to be fair, it's getting invasive now, and the snooping thing is serious, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, as you know, is due to the rise of, the manosphere and the Andrew Tate figures. And this is what
Mm.
they're worried about, and this violence against women and girls strategy when they're trying to minimize boys for a context deficit that basically they should be embarrassed or ashamed to be boisterous or aggressive because of how it jeopardizes is the safety of women. This is what they're basically trying to get through now with these unnecessary monitoring of what kids say and how they play. But yet the same thing is not done with female students. It's getting out of hand now, and hopefully
Yeah.
we're going to be doing with Merton voice, Bain voice. Um, And obviously the local authority, hopefully we can push back on some of that. And I'm trying to get more people around us. That's why I wanted that China, my name is China podcast the other day. Um,
Hmm.
instead of this relationship thing for sport and mockery and algorithm, so we need to be making serious strides in actually in the legislative level, yeah, the local level, and within our public services, making sure this VAWG is not doesn't unbalance the system. Because I said that obviously men and boys are already ducking for cover or and feeling inadequate and low self-esteem over draconian policies that is
Mm,
based in hypocrisy and from a time that was in the Victorian era. And these things have to stop. This is something we're gonna have to push back on. Mm.
for real, for real. What we see is um, a widespread um, series of events that in public institutions whereby females who are working in those institutions are committing um, what one could call arguably felonies.
Mm.
You know, if we, it's so it's not just the school system. If we look at the health and social care
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah,
environments,
of course. It's public
there's
services now are left wing, so by definition, they have more in common with feminism in the name of equality. But that's not how it's
yeah,
working out. They're creating more inequality, but it's between the genders instead of race and sexuality. And what I
hmm
find amazing is that you're supposed to be learning people. You can't see that. I said if we was to reverse these policies and make it the other way around, what you're doing now, you would say that it's misogynistic and oppressive. And you can't see the same. You
mm,
saw like that thing, that thread today when I was going back and forth with that person in the comments on Instagram. They're telling about
that's right.
the man sitting down in a public space, interrupting their recording, is threatening and regressive behavior. They had to be doing their safeguarding checks and wondering what he's going to do next. I said, is that right? So you said, you sure you're not making a song and dance about it to get coverage for your cause? So that's a joke. I said, then
Well,
I gave them examples of recently, even this week, when I got an elderly man with a stick on the bus from to getting Michael and Soraya from school. You see it? And they were like, oh,
mm,
what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I got up to let this fella sit down because he's unstable. And the woman went and sat next to my son where my son was felt uncomfortable. So I said, huh? What are you doing? And even when I glared at her, she never budged, Kingsley. She didn't budge. She
so,
didn't budge at all. So I said, yeah. So I said, it was just said, so yeah, are you lot really frightened of us when you're doing stuff like that, especially that I'm 6'4" and black? You see what I mean? I said, are you really that frightened? Are men really that threatening? When you can get in them incidences like that? I said, even like when they're younger, when I used to go on public transport with them in my hands, women
mhm,
communities pushing past me when they see I've got a child in my hand to try and get on in the name of, the rush to be packed in like sardines,
yeah,
unnecessary touching and pressing up against me. Oh, you heard her excuse. Oh, well, you don't have to be fearful of what she's going to do to you. I said, yeah, that's because of my physical strength, which is basically null and void because in this society, that doesn't really get you anywhere apart from in trouble with the police or locked up or
mm,
besmirched as a chauvinistic pig or misogynist. So come on, what are you really saying to me? What are you really saying to me? It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. I said also, if I was to go into parliament and read all the children killed by single mothers, I said it'd be a lot more than 100 women that you're talking about that Jess Phillips likes to do every year. I said, what a way no one doesn't read out those names. I said, you see, you're dressing up things for your narrative, which is based on hypocrisy and injustice.
mhm.
So I spoke to obviously the leader of the Mountain Bay Voice. So she said she's gonna help me implement that hopefully with the local authority and with Jigsaw. So hopefully
Sounds
through her
good.
influence, I'll be able to get some say. And when we go down there, we go to the AGM, we have to connect and say, listen, fun enough, I got to send it to her later. The policy that I helped
Hmm.
draft up with Sally, with Sally Amberis. Yeah,
Yes.
so obviously I've been trying to implement that and then forward on and said, this is what I would like and this is how we're going to implement it. And this is the kind of services we need and the funding we require. And then what we'll do, obviously, if that gets off the ground, we'll start using the events, the merchandise, the pay-per-click advertising, this channel to finance that. so we don't have to rely on, the master pulling the rug from under our feet if we start getting too controversial or challenging them too much.
Cracking the whip.
No, yeah, we don't want none of that. We don't want no, Stevens over us or no Calvins. Master Calvin. You see what I mean? We don't want none of that.
Stephen and Uncle Tom.
All right.
Yeah, we don't really want that at all. One thing that has to be highlighted is how much of the legislation is being put into effect by government as it's self-serving. Their vested interests are prioritized, and as long as it lines up their pockets, then they will let things fly, and especially this legislation, which is such that the parents don't really have the final say as it pertains to their children, what their children are exposed to within the school environment.
Mm.
And when we see examples of females who have groomed young boys within secondary school institutions, and the fact that those kind of incidents have gone forgotten, then there is almost no cap as to what kind of foolishness these females within the public institutions, and this is not to cast the die on all of them, but a lot of them don't. There, a lot of them can arguably have the die cast on them simply because of the fact that a lot of this stuff goes unheard of and goes left unpunished. The public services are leaving all of these acts of criminal behavior that a lot of these females are committing unchecked and unaccounted for. There needs to be accountability. And it brings me to a saying that I don't always use it, but I use it on occasion. And the saying goes like this: misogyny prances around in the daytime, and misandry prowls around in the nighttime.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I hear that.
And that really is, in a nutshell, a reflection of the way things are looked at in this world as it pertains to male and female behavior and fundamental identity politics as a whole. Yeah. But the thing that has it's interesting because the thing that has in tandem with what's going on in politics is the recent departure of the transport secretary.
Yeah.
Is her name Rebecca Haig or something like that? I've forgotten her name.
Laura Haig?
Something like that. But
the line about having a mobile phone stolen.
Having a mobile phone
She's not pitted because she's a female politician. There's more sympathy for her over it.
There you go. There you go.
I know exactly the example you're trying to make. Let's check it now. Transport secretary. Yeah, Louise Haig. Yeah,
Louise Haig. There you go. When it comes to someone like Matt Hancock, and maybe just as I'm just using him as an example, there'll be all the talk, and bearing in mind during the Tories' time in power, they did excuse males to a similar degree, but generally speaking, it's likely that the male politicians like Dominic Cummings, they'll be dragged in the mud until time finally comes when the fight when and the stats and the real information gets leaked. And then people will finally say, "Oh, well, we maybe maybe it was not meant to be found out, but it's out anyway." So, and it's a very laissez-faire attitude towards politics that we have, and it goes back to what you said that we don't have the kind of nature like the French do, you know, when it comes to really pushing for change.
Mm.
And even though
Yeah, but we're
it's very
gynocentric king. Sorry to cut you, but it's a gynocentric government, gynocentric society. So there's no in-group preference when it comes to us. And we suffer in
yeah.
silence, we abuse, we serve, we help people, but they never focus on that aspect. They always focus on the negative, and the negative is from a small minority of people. By the way they talk, you would have think it was a pandemic like COVID over here when it comes to misogyny and violence against women and girls. And obviously the way they trump up the stats, they massage them to make them inflate them is diabolical. For instance, they were coming out with that thing again the other day, Women's Aid, in that campaign with Metro about it's not right. And I said that
But
0.6% of false allegation is a fraud. Said if you sift through the CPS data, so what they do, they don't prosecute anyone they think they can't get conviction. That's why it's so small. Said if you look into the police records before these charges come to court, what happens? It said they put them as no further action when they know it's obviously lies or deceit. So I said, because it's processed as an NFA, it never gets seen in the domestic abuse or false allegation figures. Said anyone that does a bit of digging for more than 10 minutes will know that with a bit of critical thinking, will know that. I said, and then you got these narcissists in these positions, like female narcissists, as you say, misandrous. Nicole Jacobs, the Domestic Abuse Commission. Charlotte Waxman, the Victims Commission. Yeah? A lot of the Women's Aid acolytes, all peddling this fraud to the people. And then now they've got enough influence and money to be constantly being in the newspapers, the daily tabloids that people casually read, who don't have time to really look into the peer-reviewed research. They cherry-pick advocacy research and put them headline-grabbing figures in there, which is not true. Yeah? Massage and propaganda. And then they go on like it's gospel. They said, you must do something about it. And we must teach our boys not to be like Andrew Tate. We must have the gynocentric simps turning around and saying, listen, men, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And you should be saving us. And then you see what happened with that fella the other day. Remember when I sent you that post where he defended a lady that was attacked?
And
His
really
skull
was
fractured and he had brain damage.
life-changing injury.
Yeah, exactly. Brain damage for being a hero.
And
Now he's no good to his own family.
no, he's no good to his own family.
Feminists or misandrists saying, "Oh, he's done right for us. Let's look after him and do a whip round in the charity. Make sure he's all right."
They're not even gonna do,
They're not doing it.
they won't even say fart on him. Let's put it that way. Here's the thing, yeah, we're just considered collateral in the whole grand scheme of things.
Yeah, the disposable. Yeah, of course. Well, men are
They
disposable.
would say, oh, poor him, and some will now say, and so, well, he shouldn't have butt his nose in because it's not his business.
Mm, mm,
So discrediting him for, actually acting upon his conscience.
mm,
So it's okay to kick a guy when he's down, when he's lying down, and think, oh, he's supposed to take it.
mm,
Forgetting that this guy could have a family that are dependent on him, a son, a daughter that look up to him, a nephew and niece that actually want to spend time with him,
mm,
sisters and brothers that want to catch up with him, and so on and so forth.
mm,
The example is self-explanatory, to be honest with you.
mm. Yeah, of course. But hopefully, with our work, with the frontline work and the work we're doing behind the scenes, we can change the attitude.
Hopefully we can hopefully we can make whatever impact we can, Um, it's um, it's one of those things whereby if
Liberator
feminism
and
is such a
and make society so
positive,
much better.
then why don't they just take one? Why don't all the Western feminists form a campaign that will be a way of reaching out to the women and liberating the women in India,
Mm,
for example,
mm.
who are
Well, to be
always
fair, they
at
are trying to do
the
that still. I know it's through the United Nations they're trying to do that, but obviously
through the
they come in
United
here first.
Nations, you see, and that's that you see, they're waiting for the United Nations to give them the consent.
Mm. To be fair, there's a few what is it they call them NGOs that go out to these places and try, but then obviously, from the digging in, there it seems to be a haven for trafficking of kids. You see,
Mm-hmm.
the trafficking of women anyway. And then you got cats
Mm-hmm.
like Ghislaine Maxwell, isn't it? Those types are involved
Yeah,
in
just
kind of thing.
Lane Maxwell.
So it's usually some kind of gatekeeping from some feminine ringleader in these havens of male corruption and deviance.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
you see, so in tandem, but it's usually people that we don't interact with day to day. They're the higher ups. So
You
that's
can
why I
say
laugh.
that again.
That's why I laugh at them. I said, yeah, I said, you do realize there's a lot of these characters, how it's like, like we're in the slavery when you used to have the Underground Railroad. With this to be
Mm.
the molester railroad, you see, where
Mm-hmm.
these are the kind of individuals who have privileged lifestyles in Europe and the Americas are coming in from poor nations and getting people people that are barren, organ harvesting, as you know, and then bringing them over and said, yeah, under the quiet, in the dark economy, as they call it, making these decisions and dealing with poor people that haven't got no voice and can defend themselves. And then got the cheek to say it's because of the patriarchy. Said, my God.
Bloody hell.
I said, I asked one of them the other day, have you been to Thailand? You see what I mean? With the lady boys and the children in the brothels. Yeah. Put forward by
Mm-hmm.
their mothers to basically so they can make ends meet for money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I said, yes, I
Mm-hmm.
said, no one talks about that, do they? Yes, I said, come on, let's get real here. Let's get real here. So Ghislaine Maxwell, basically hid in plain sight for over 30 years. I remember when we were kids, when her dad owned the Daily Mirror, they were saying rumors about she was involved in that when she started dealing with Epstein. Yeah. But she's roped
Mighty.
into it. She was manipulated. I said, "How is that right? Is that right?" They really make examples of these types. It's always like, oh, there's some kind of
Yeah,
mental health
yeah.
issue, or they had a bad background being brought up. It's always that kind of, oh, it's terrible. But if it's the man, he's the devil incarnate, and he must be hung from a tree, or locked up in the gallows. And this is the kind of philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
And
it's
then what I find out is that more men should be helping us to prevent this propaganda, but they're not. And then the
but they're
ones that do
siding.
anything, they got Messiah complex like Elevai and thinking, oh, we should be the one leading it and thing, and they're collecting money for doing it. Yeah, yeah. So
Or a
it's a mess,
weirdo
really. Mm.
or a weirdo messianic complex like Andrew Tate
Mm,
himself.
And they're
Because
not doing
Andrew
properly.
Tate sees himself as a messiah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's a
there you
mockery, mate.
go. All right.
It's
Well,
an effing sham.
thanks for joining us, everyone. I would like you to like, share, and subscribe to Equal Start, alternatively Parental Dilemma, and you can see more of the kind of interviews and talks that we have with our team and sponsored invited guests. We're trying to change a thing in terms of society. And people talk about equality and justice. We're actually really trying to strive for it. No, we're not mouse speaks who don't practice what we preach. So thanks for joining us today, everyone. And always remember, where there's people, there's power. Justice in our time.